Welcome to Prepare for Takeoff. I'm the creator and host, Terry L. Cyrus. We're the podcast dedicated to amplifying Black excellence. Every week, we sit down with a proven professional or rising entrepreneur. This week, we have a major guest. We're sitting down with Grammy and Peabody Award-winning President and CEO of VERZUZ, Steve Pamon. Steve, what's going on, team?
Yes, sir, team. Thank you so much for having me, my brother. Appreciate you.
Thank you, man. I know you have a busy schedule, and I just appreciate the fact that you gave us some of your time. The story is amazing, so please allow me to give you your virtual flowers. They much deserve, man. There's so many things to admire about your story, your journey, how it got started in the shy. I want to give our viewers and listeners your backstory and all of your accomplishments. I'm sure there's going to be a whole lot of takeaways that they're going to be able to walk away with saying, I'm going to put that into my grab bag so I can pursue my passion and be very intentional about that. So with all that being said, you're Chicago's own from the South Side.
South side of Chicago, absolutely, man. Grew up, was born right in Cook County Hospital, 1970. So puts me back a long time, man. But was born actually to two college freshmen. So my mother and father had me, and like many stories, mine is unique, but not necessarily unique to the Black community. So I was raised by my parents who stayed in school, but they were part of a larger village of family and friends who also helped them raise me. So I tell people all the time, I grew up as an only child, but I was never alone.
It takes a village, as they always say. We in that same early 70s time frame, bro. So the 50 plus is the new 30 plus.
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad. I tell people the alternative to aging is not something I want to deal with. So I'm good that I'm old.
That's a very good point. So what was it like growing up in the shy, man, in the 80s and whatnot?
Oh man, it was fantastic. People have, like many things, the exaggerated version of it. Obviously, we lived in the hood, but it was so much love. We grew up, so my block was full of row houses and two flats. I grew up on 80th and Green and on 79th and Green. So for those who are familiar with Chicago, 79th and Halsted. So I grew up in the heart of the South Side, further west than the Dan Ryan, a little bit south of what now is known as Bankrate Field, but is Comiskey Park for us back in the day where the White Sox play. So we grew up, man, where we had a lot of extended families, had 25 or 26 houses on each side of the street. So you're dealing with 50 houses, 3 apartments in each house. So our block parties would have literally 100 plus people living on the block. And we had all generations. There would be myself and 12 or 14 of my friends in my age group, and then somebody's brother and sister who 3 years older than us. I have their 12 to 15, and it was just a stair step. So for us, you were able to see the good, the bad, but it was a real potpourri of everything. And the thing that I really remember back then was we spent so much time outside with each other, right? And again, taught you how to deal with people, taught you how to frankly deal with all the shortcomings of life, because you had to deal with it real time. I tell people I played disorganized sports most of my life. So we played whatever ball you had, Terry. That's what sport we played, whether it was 16-inch softball, whether it was basketball, whether it was hide and go seek, whether we called the thing kill the man, where we played football with a winter hat. Whoever was the smallest person gave up their winter hat as the ball, and we played in the snow on concrete. And so that to me was Chicago. We had so much reverence for the young ladies who were in college, who were 18, 19 years old. Those were grown women to us, right? The folks who were 20, 25, who had their first job, who work and get on the bus and go downtown. That was special to us. And then you're talking about the older adults. We had the teachers, the postmen, the cops, people who drove the bus, people worked at the dry cleaners. We had so many people in our neighborhood that, frankly looked out. At the end of the day, it was, obviously it wasn't the safest place in the world, but we never felt that, because at the end of the day, you always felt like somebody had your back. And again, going back to never felt alone.
You were always surrounded by that community that embraced you. And now one of the things that you hear, that kid is really smart and they're in not the ideal set of circumstances. Maybe not being smart is the coolest thing. Maybe the cool thing is being the guy that gets kicked out of school rather than gets, applauded for all of his accolades in the classroom. Something tells me that you were that smart guy in those set of circumstances growing up in that kind of a community. So how did you juggle that, being that guy that excelled in the classroom and also had the support of the community when you came home on the South Side?
Well, I think the truth of the matter is I didn't always excel in the classroom. I was always smart. but I didn't always excel. And I'll get into a very simplified thing there. So my mother, again, had me when she was in college. She went on to become a teacher in the Chicago public school systems, worked her way up, and eventually became an assistant principal, et cetera. But because she was all about education by definition, that enabled me to draft behind her. So I went to school early, frankly, as a babysitting thing. I was 3, 4 years old, and I was already in kindergarten and first grade. So I was accelerated not just through my natural abilities, but frankly, through no choice of my own. My mother literally, I was homeschooled and went to school at the same time. And so, I was very blessed with that. At the same token, my mother was part of a larger village. Her family was very large and very well known in Chicago. My uncles and aunts looked after me in a huge way. And so I was able again to draft behind them. And so I had that safety net of I had every type of person in my family. Let me put it that way: good, bad, indifferent. And so therefore I didn't have that pressure to join any type of group. I was already part of a group. In fact, my biggest thing was trying to get away from that group. At the same token, my mother made sure that anything that was available in Chicago public schools that could advance what she wanted to do with me, I was underway in doing. So I went to high school in a special program after sixth grade. And so I was able to get that, out of the way. I took the PSAT. I think I was like 10 or something. So I was in this program for gifted children. But my mother, in the same token, I was a lot smaller than average for my age. So I was able to finish most of what I needed for high school by the time I was 14, and I graduated at 16. And
Mm.
so it took me, to be honest, going to Morehouse to really have my maturity and my emotional state catch up with my intellectual capability. And that was to me the biggest transition in my life. And I owe it to my grandmother, who wasn't able to go to college, but I never forget this, she was accepted into Spelman, and she really pushed for me to go to Morehouse. And she really explained to me the difference between going to college and becoming a man. And those two things were not necessarily always intertwined, they were mutually exclusive. But
Mhm.
she said it's important for you to become a man and to stand on your own too, and to go through all those things. And obviously, when you hear that stuff, you don't necessarily internalize it. But my transition, leaving the South Side of Chicago with all that support, with all the familiarity, and going to Atlanta at 16, that was the biggest life changer for me. That exposed me to, in my opinion, the real world and the real aspirations. Because to your point, I wanted to be cool amongst my friends. I wanted to be well known in the neighborhood. I wanted to be a contributor to my family. When I went to Morehouse, my insecurities were on full display because there they were talking about being a leader in the world,
Mhm.
right? I
Right.
didn't even know what that meant. Raphael Warnock, who I still consider to be a very good friend, was one of my classmates. I remember meeting him freshman week. And I can tell you point blank, and I'm not just saying this because he's a senator, that young brother was about the community and serving the world back in 1987. I don't know about you, but I'm one of those people. I might not be the best at what I do, but I'm going to make sure I'm not the worst. So when you're going to school and you're sitting in those hot classrooms with no air conditioning, and they're teaching you about Black history and like Black people built the pyramids, and you've got a Raphael Warnock sitting next to you and countless other brothers who are in there, by definition, that's going to lift you up. And so to me, it wasn't about how did I manage the dichotomy between trying to be cool and being good in school. It was literally at Morehouse where I realized those two things definitely go hand in hand, which is the coolest guys are the people who have the information. The coolest guys were the people who led the community. And like I said, I wasn't necessarily ever going to be considered the coolest, but I was darn sure not going to be considered the person who was holding the cool people back.
I like that. It's all about exposure as far as I'm concerned, man. And
Absolutely.
even with these conversations that we have on the podcast, there's so many people that aren't privy to these kind of conversations and more importantly, how someone's journey started. A lot of times when we see people and they've had all this success, they have all of these accolades, they have their trophies, if you will. They don't understand the practice that they put into that. They don't understand how many games they had to play in order to have those things at their disposal. So for you to say, I had to navigate being a product of two young people having a child, then you're in the Chi, you're navigating that, and then you're going to a new city and you're 16 in the A in 87. But then what happened when you were there is you were able to be introduced to what was really cool. What was cool was having the information and being a leader and having those high aspirations.
Absolutely, team. And my mother used to talk about this, man, and she devoted her life to special education teachers, so EMH and LD, learning disabilities, emotionally disabled students. Used to say you only learn three ways. You learn through your individual experience, right? You learn through personal observation, but most of your learning comes through storytelling that you hear. And so the only way that one of the things when you described what life was like growing up in Chicago, to be honest, I thought that was the best life ever. Like, let me be super clear. Like I tell people all the time, I am so thankful that that's how I grew up because I didn't know any better. Because I was confined through, again, my individual experience, my personal observation, and the stories I heard. So I heard stories about people being legendary on the South Side, people moving to the West Side, people going to Northwestern or DePaul, U of I, those types of things. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. When I went to Atlanta, I heard about stories of like, wait, the black mayor and the black district attorney. And you could go to the airport and people are working black. And it's black lawyers and it's black doctors, but it's also black criminals. It's black homeless people. And so all of a sudden, my stories expanded my mind. And so to your point, I could only be what you could dream about being, right? To your point, nobody wants to be the exception. Most people want to be the rule. So when
Right.
I say Morehouse didn't do anything other than change the rules for me, right? Like going to college, I consider to be special. It wasn't special to be a black man in college at a college full of black men. Like, let's be super clear. So to me, it eliminated the excuses. It showed me not only the diversity, frankly, that I had, but the diversity within our people. Again, that first week, I meet people from Savannah, Georgia, from Los Angeles, California, from Seattle, Washington, from Birmingham, Alabama, from Philadelphia. And so when you're in the mix with all those people, all of a sudden I'm coming back to Chicago because I'm coming back during the breaks. I'm coming back during the summer. And I'm not talking like I'm from the South Side. Because the truth of the matter is, I'm not from the South Side anymore. I'm of the South Side, but I'm from all these places,
Right.
right? And you feel comfortable maneuvering in all these places. You feel comfortable dreaming about being in all these places. And that to me was, like I said, the biggest gift Morehouse gave me was just the ability again to say, you know what, I could see myself as fill in the blank. Before, you could have dreams, but you, man, come on, Terry, we're not doing this, we're not doing that. Who we know doing that? All of a sudden it was like, wait a minute, whether you're a botanist, whether you're a biologist, whether you're a basketball player, at the end of the day, I couldn't say anymore after 1987. I don't know we do that.
Same thing happened to me, man. Growing up in West Virginia, shout out to all my people from West Virginia.
Yes,
Shout out to
sir.
our
Yes, sir.
mutual friend and fraternity brother, John Quick. Like we
Yes,
literally grew
sir.
up together, man. He used to go to my
Wow.
T-ball games.
Wow.
Right.
Wow. That's
Him and my
amazing, bro.
him and my brother, who's also a brother, he's 88 Theta Psi, bro. He they used to go to basketball camps together. They were in the same breakdancing crew, you know,
Yes,
that
sir. Yes, sir. I
and
love it.
Quick
I love it.
organized. And but I guess I wasn't cool enough to make to make the squad, man. So I was on the outside looking in. So my breakdancing skills wasn't what they needed to be to be a part of their group,
To
man.
be a part of that, though. I heard that, though. I heard that
Yeah,
too.
I wasn't that guy. But what I will say, once I moved to Jersey, and to your point, it just kind of broadened my horizons, and it really went into hyper speed once I went from the area of Jersey that borders Philadelphia to the area of Jersey that borders New York, where I'm at.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
began to spend more and more time in and out of the city, and similar to what you were exposed to at Morehouse, I was exposed to that by hanging out and finding myself in these different circles in New York, realizing that New York is a very progressive city. It's full of progressive individuals. And then that just kind of sparked something in me that was always there. But to your point, it's like, man, come on. How you going to be on TV? And I was that kid, 7, 8 years old,
Yeah, yeah.
seeing Gary Coleman saying, I want to do that. I'm calling up the news station saying, I want to do a commercial. But when you're not surrounded by those kind of individuals, people are looking at you crazy. But then
Yeah,
once you
absolutely.
move And you begin to realize not only is it the business that you see as far as actors and what it is you see visually, whether on the screen or who you hear on the radio, there's also a business behind what makes that possible. So
Yes,
that kind
sir.
of gave me that light bulb moment, and it began to make me have these high aspirations. I always had it in me, and I think it came through sports. I ran track, blessed to be the 100-meter state champion. Only ran
All
track
right.
1 year.
Congratulations, bro.
Yeah, bro. Ran 1 year track. My boy was a 2-time state champion, but the reason why he wasn't a 3-time state champion is because the Bros won that last state championship. But
Yeah.
it was those kind of things that I was able to build upon, whether it was sports. And then the next spring, I pledged the greatest fraternity in the world, as
Yes,
you and I
sir.
will both agree, make us up our fraternity incorporated, root to the Q's. So I did that
Yes,
early
sir.
on in my college journey. I did that spring 91. So that was another accomplishment that I was able to draw on. So then once I moved and I met these other people who had these high aspirations, I never felt as though I wasn't capable of doing what it is they were doing. Cause I'm like, wait a minute. I managed to accomplish these things thus far. Why can't I add another thing to my list of accomplishments?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm certain that once you went to the A and said, oh, I'm not going to definitely be the one holding up the rear. I'm going to compete with my peers. And this brother, he's trying to change the world. Well, I ain't trying to change the light bulbs. I'm trying to change the world with them.
Well said. Well said, team. And listen, first of all, I love the way you described everything because I tell my sons this all the time. Two sons, one's 22, the other one's 15, in that you only as good as your aperture, meaning when we talk about leveling up, I don't mean financially. I mean, at the end of the day, widen your scope. What you did never will take away from West Virginia. I tell people all the time, you're building, you're not replacing. That is core. The breakdance system, that's core. Track is core, right? But every way you described your story, everything was about ascension and affirmation, meaning you were trying new things. Again, you didn't win every race, but you won some, and you won some
Mm-hmm.
very important ones, right? But losing early on gave you the opportunity to win and know what winning was, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I tell people this all the time. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you're from. Like Rakim said, it ain't where you're from, it's where you at. But where you're at mentally is more important than where you're at physically. Every one of those opportunities expanded your mental aperture. Even if physically you weren't able to be everywhere in New York, just you walking down the streets of Manhattan, you saw the opportunities. You saw everybody getting it. And that's what I really feel like we do to ourselves, right? Is that we become our own worst hater because we don't like losing, because we don't like trying new things. We retreat and close our aperture up. And so we say, I'm going to be the godfather of Harlem. I'm going to be the king of New York. I'm going to rule the South Side of Chicago. And we start to set our own aperture so close. And we know that doesn't actually bring anything new to the table. It really
Right.
doesn't. And so everybody I know that feels very happy, at least professionally in life, constantly there are three things. One, you see, and we talk about this, we'll get to some of my professional stuff later, but I tell people all the time, it's rooted in these three principles. It's called competency, confidence, and compassion. If I teach you to do something new, I say, you know what, Terry, I need you to learn how to bartend. The first thing we're going to do is work on your competency. How do you actually make drinks? All
Mm-hmm.
right. The second thing is we're going to work on your confidence. Now you don't have to look at the recipe sheet anymore. Now you don't have to be nervous about it. Now you're making two, three drinks at a time. You know, keep trying. You're not a better person. You're just a more experienced person,
Right.
right? We are God's children. Just because you could do that in your sleep doesn't mean you're a better human being. It just means you're more comfortable and confident in that skill set. But the highest level is being compassionate, which is now, Terry, that you are super confident in tendon bar. You can make five drinks, you could twirl, you could do all those things. Now, can you go teach the next man or woman
Right.
how to do it? And have the patience to sit next to them when they overpour, when they spill, when they don't get it right, when they mistake a daiquiri for a margarita. That's the highest level. Because guess how you end up learning something even better? By teaching it to somebody else. And so it becomes a circle, right? At the end of the day, you constantly grow. And what I loved about your story about achievement on the track is at the end of the day, people get more confident failing the more winning they have because they don't take it as their only thing. So at the end of the day, just by you achieving on the field, you felt more confident at taking a chance on something that you didn't know anything about. And then you do well in that all of a
Hmm.
sudden. And so you see how all of a sudden losing becomes the winner's curse, because the more comfortable you are at losing, the easier it is for you to win. It's only the people
Right.
that's scared to lose that never try anything. And what's the guarantee you ain't gonna win if you don't play? I mean, I see it. I see it every day. Trust me, I see it every day. Well, you can go through. I don't care who you are. If you probably type in Google and type in my name, Steve Pamon bloopers, you're gonna see mistakes. You're gonna see things I messed up on. You all type of stuff. Everybody is a mess. When you really look at it, it's like a microscope, right? If you ever like put your hand underneath the microscope, you'll see all the bumps, you see disfigurements, you'll see everything. It looks smooth, right? When you're away from it. But the closer you get, you see all the imperfections. That's life. At the end
Right.
of the day, where on your resume does it list the jobs you went out for and didn't get? If I went on LinkedIn right now, I say, yo, Terry, pull up your LinkedIn. Where's the column that it shows what schools you applied for and didn't get into? Where are the
Right.
races you lost? It doesn't. You're the only one who internalizes that and either uses it as fuel or, frankly, uses it as a fence. I tell people things are either fuel or fences. A fence
Hmm.
is going to block you from doing anything else. A fence going, matter of fact, sometimes people get so comfortable in the fence, they think it's safe within it. So they just stay there,
Hmm.
right?
They don't
Other
even try to. They
people,
don't even try to leave.
come on, bro. And we know so many great people who ain't trying hard. But the truth of the
Hmm.
matter is, other people look at it as fuel. And by the way, we all have our different things. I tell people all the time, I could never be a salesperson because I could never do cold calling. And people hang up the phone on you. We know some people in our lives who, man, they can pick up the phone, but they'll take 100 calls and make 10 sales and be fine with that. And I always say, am I right or wrong? No. Are they right or wrong? No. At the end of the day, though, they managed to take that failure as fuel. I managed to take that failure in one area as a fence. There are other people who say, man, I'm not going back to school. I'm not going to get any more degrees. I'm not going to sit in the classroom. They are usually saying that because they love knowledge and they just feel like they can get that somewhere else. Generally, there are very few people who did very well in the classroom who are like, I don't feel like going back to school. You don't
Right.
get too many straight A dropouts.
That's a good point.
It just I tell people this all the time. Whenever people ask me, "Oh, is going back to get your master's or this degree, was it worth it the whole nine?" I tell them usually yes. They say, "Oh, well, my cousin said it wasn't worth it." I said, "Well, how many masters does your cousin have?" None. That's like asking somebody, "Is it worth it to go to Disney World?" They say, "I've never been, but I don't think it's worth it." Would you take their advice? No.
Right.
You
That's
know,
the
it
wrong
doesn't mean
person
you
to
should take
ask.
my advice. Yeah, but you got to take everything with perspective. And like I said, what I love about your story, and I see it amongst so many successful people, is like I said, this ability to travel, even within your mind, and this ability not to be fenced in and boxed in. And, last but not least, is resiliency and perseverance. I tell people that all the time, man. Business is a combat sport. It's like boxing. At the end of the day, Muhammad Ali still got knocked down. Muhammad Ali is considered the greatest boxer of all time by many people. His record was not undefeated. He was defeated many times, but he got back up and he stayed in there. George Foreman, rest in peace, one of the greatest individuals in the history of the sport, one of the greatest men, in my opinion, of all time, right? Lost the most visible sporting event of all time. And that was his fight, the Rumble in the Jungle, to Ali. What happened after he lost? I don't know. The man made $250 million. He had a great consumer product with all those grills. He had a huge multi-million-dollar contract with HBO and became the oldest heavyweight champion of all time and was a man who was loved and revered. This was the same man who was booed, a black man, when he set foot in Africa. So this is just in our lifetime. You can't tell me we've been down. Ain't never been a situation where a whole continent rooted for our downfall.
Speaking of education, I know
Yeah, yeah, yes, sir.
once you graduated from Morehouse, you then
Yeah,
transitioned to Stanford and got your
yes,
MBA,
sir.
correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
now,
sir.
what led to that? Did you want to go to the West Coast? Was it something about Stanford that stuck out to you? What led to that?
Like many things, all of the above, right? So
Okay,
what happened was is that when I graduated from Morehouse, I graduated with a finance degree, and I was fortunate enough to work as an analyst at Merrill Lynch, right? 250 VZ, quote unquote, quintessential Wall Street. There, most of the analysts, because it was a 2-year job, had a track where you would leave after 2 or 3 years and go get your MBA from all the traditional programs, Harvard, Wharton, Northwestern, UVA, the list goes on, right? One of the things I was very enamored with working at Merrill was the PCs. I mean, again, this is the early 90s. We were using Sun workstations and Dell computers and all these things. I just thought, this is the wave. And I remember getting one of the Sun workstations, and I looked as back when the instructor manuals were these giant binders. And I looked in the binder and it said, made in Mountain View, California. And I was like, Mountain View, California. And again, this is before Google and everything else. I said, wow, where is that? And when I looked on the atlas, Mountain View, California is adjacent to Palo Alto, California, which is adjacent to Stanford University. And I said, hold up a second. If this is the future, why would I go to school in Cambridge, Massachusetts, when I could literally go to school next to the future? I was
right.
like, there, literally, I'm like, let me get this straight. #1 business school in the world in Silicon Valley. I wanted to transition out of finance at the time. Why would I go to Wharton or Harvard? I was like, let me go there. The other big thing is that I literally had a map. I was big on maps as a kid. That's what I love. But I used to care. I have maps all the time. And growing up in Chicago, you just put a pin in that. Going to school in Atlanta, and at the time I was working and living in New York. Literally, you take the Midwest, Southeast, literally East Coast. I said, man, if I'm lucky enough to get into Stanford, I could put a pin in all four quadrants.
Right.
And so going back to the aperture, I felt like I had a strong community at home. I had a strong community in Atlanta through Morehouse and the whole nine. I was building a strong community in New York with my friends. I lived in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. I worked on Wall Street. I was feeling really good about that clique. I said, man, you know where I don't have my base? I don't have my base on the West Coast. So if I could
Mm,
learn about technology, I can go to a great business school, but then I could have that base on the West Coast. Well, then now that would set me apart from most people. And so, I was blessed enough to get in. And by the way, there are great reasons to go to any school. I tell people all the time, I'm happy for anybody going to any school, right? But for me, those two reasons really set it off. And I never forget trying to explain to my father why I wasn't going to go to Harvard Business School. Because in his mind, he was just like, hold up a second, bro. First of all, if Harvard was mistaken enough to let you in, you better go before they
good.
realize, you know what I'm saying? They literally, he's like, so there's some kid named Steve Ramon somewhere that's mad as a mug because that was the person they really wanted to let in, but just through some clerical error, because this is back when you had to type out, all the stuff. Like you were doing a lot on the computer. He was just like, bruh, listen, he's like, don't be looking to get force in the mouth. I think you better take your tail to Harvard. I told him no. He's like, where are you going? So I'm going to Stanford. He was like, Stanford, Connecticut? And I said, no, no, no. And for and by the way, this is a true story. I'd explain to him, rest in peace. I'd just say, no, Jim Plunkett, John Elway, Stanford. And he was like, oh, John Elway, I get it. Because at the
I get
time,
it now.
that's what Stanford was known for. And then he asked some other people, he was a cop, he asked some other people on his job about Stanford, and they co-signed it. And that was the only reason why I wasn't World War III. Because in his
Mm.
mind, he was like, listen, Northwestern is in Chicago. Why you don't want to come home? He's like, now you're too good to come home. That was a whole thing. He's like, you don't want to go to Harvard. Now you want to go to Stanford. He's like, you can't play football. He's like, give me a break. Like his whole thing was like, bro, are you going through, how you the only 22-year-old going through like a midlife crisis? Like, what
Right.
is wrong with you? So we were able to work it out. Like I said, went to Stanford, met some great people, learned a ton. Obviously, I was lucky in the sense that my hypothesis about Silicon Valley and the way that took off was there. Because I tell people all the time, I went to business school when Yahoo was yahoo.stanford.edu, right? When Mark
Wow.
Andreessen had a browser called Mosaic, right? And I remember they had a launch event for Netscape at the thing. I mean, this is how early this was. People were using Pointcast and CompuServe. Like Apple had a thing called eVillage. So this was literally pre-internet days. I mean, I can tell you, eBay was formed on our campus. There's a company called Internet Auctions Inc. Almost all of the big venture capitalists. I had a good friend, Jeff, who literally after business school, I went to a company called McKinsey and Company Management Consulting Firm. And I remember Jeff explaining to me he was going to go work for this company that was selling books over the internet in Seattle, Washington. So what are you talking about? So, oh yeah, man. He said, this guy Jeff, man, he's got this thing called Amazon.com. I said, Amazon.com in Seattle? It was one of those things where, as my roommate at the time used to say, we should get people to grandma face, because I'm big on like positivity. So you could tell me at that time you were going to do anything, and I'd be like, yo, Tyre, that is fantastic, bro. God bless. Just give you the nod. That was how I did my man when he said he was going to work at Amazon. Obviously, he retired young and, and left there with a fortune. And so
Right.
I say that to say that enabled me to be in an environment again where it was the West Coast, things were a little more laid back. People were really into technology and the products. They weren't into a lot of the superficial stuff I saw on Wall Street. So again, nothing's better or worse, but I was able to kind of bring some of that mentality going forward. So it was a little bit of a potpourri, still South Side, still Morehouse, still Wall Street, but I had that Stanford confidence that was like, I don't need to show you. I'm just gonna, be as I am, and was able to work out from there.
Once you left Stanford, I know you was looking to transition out of finance. Did you transition into entertainment from there, or did you go back to finance?
Well, a little bit of both. So
Okay.
I worked for a management consulting firm called McKinsey. It's one of the most prestigious firms out there. I don't say that to brag. I'd say it again because I looked at it as sort of post MBA education for me. And by the way, I learned more at McKinsey than any job, any place ever. And McKinsey's whole thing is that they would go in and represent strategy, whether it was cost cutting, whether it was growth, and literally sell that in to the senior management team. So I was fortunate enough to meet some great people there who helped develop something called the time practice, which was telecom and interactive multimedia. And I won't say all of my clients, but I had some very big clients at the time that were dealing in the entertainment and telecom space. And I was able to learn a lot, both working in those environments as well as consulting. And one of those, I will say, one of those companies ended up being Black Entertainment Television. This was before they sold to Viacom, the whole nine. Learned an awful lot. Disney was one of my clients. Learned an awful lot there. But being able to work for Disney and BET at the same time in the late 90s really showed me opposite ends of the stick. Like we talked about, there's enthusiasm and there's execution. One of the companies may have been great in execution, the enthusiasm may have been lacking. Another one of those companies, when you could sort of guess, was really great on enthusiasm, but at the end of the day, didn't really have a lot of systems in place to execute. And again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just learnings. And so I was able to learn there. But in the very late 90s, I had a client that was out of Dulles, Virginia, called America Online, and worked a ton with America Online on their strategy. And then when I left McKinsey, America Online bought Time Warner. At the time, that was the biggest merger in history. And through a bunch of, relationships and contacts, I got a phone call from, at that time, corporate AOL Time Warner. They were building something called the Corporate Strategy and Investments Group, which is their internal investment banking and management consulting team. And I got that call in literally early 2000 to work at 75 Rock in New York. at the time, the biggest media company in the world. We were essentially their on-call McKinsey. They didn't need to hire McKinsey because they had us. And so that gave me a purview of, at the time, the biggest technology and entertainment company the world had ever seen. Both, again, the gifts of that as well as the curses. And so I saw a
Mm-hmm.
lot of problems. I saw a lot of things that were wrong, but those things that were wrong absolutely taught me a lot and bonded me. And from there, I was able to transition to a division of corporate Time Warner called HBO. And at HBO, I ran business development, multicultural marketing, multiplex channels, which are HBO Latino, HBO Family, HBO Zone, a lot of the multicultural programming. So Simmons Lathan Entertainment, the
Mm-hmm.
relationship with Lee Gaither and Stan Lathan there. And then ultimately HBO Digital, which we came up with the team. And I say we as a big, big team on that, a product that eventually became HBO Zone, which eventually became what's now known as Max. So literally in the mid 2000s, my team developed that, left HBO in 2008, transitioned to run business development for the NFL, learned again, a ton there, was responsible for some of the biggest events and some of the new technologies that the NFL did. Again, self-explanatory. There, learned discipline. You learn the business of sports, which is probably the most business-like of any entertainment offering. Again, people say what they want to about the NFL, but there's nobody, I mean this in straight face, there's not a single company on earth I've seen do business with the level of discipline and skill as the National Football League. Like people you do not understand that. And my dream, and this is really super important, my dream at the NFL was to become the first Black team president. Now, I think there are 5 or 6 Black presidents of teams, including Sandra Douglas Morgan, who is just fantastic. She runs the Raiders, a number of other folks. But at the time, and we're going back to 2011, there were no Black presidents of the team. And so the
Mm.
teams run on sort of what they call a 4-box system, which is the media rights, sales, corporate partnerships and sponsorships. And then last but not least, commercial, licensing and apparel, right? If you can do those 4 things, that becomes the valuation of an NFL team. I had experience at doing most of those things with media, et cetera, but I didn't have any experience doing corporate partnerships or sponsorships. I'm not a sales guy. At the time, and I'll really fast forward on this, JPMorganChase had bought a number of different banks and was going through their own reorg, and they needed someone to come on and manage all of their corporate sponsorships as well as their partnership portfolio in the media and entertainment space. And some of those partnerships include Lord's Cricket Ground in England, the English UK sailing team, the JP
Mm-hmm.
Morgan Corporate Challenge, which is road races all around the world, Madison Square Garden, the New York Knicks, the Rockettes, Radio City Music Hall, the Forum, the Chicago Theater. Like, the list goes on, right?
Right.
Soldier Field in Chicago. I mean, this was $500 million worth of events every year. And I built that team. So I went over to JP Morgan, built that group, built the team, activated those sponsorships. We ended up culminating with the sponsorship of the Golden State Warriors, which is now Chase Center there. We have Chase Field and Diamondbacks. So again, really learned that. And so I said to myself, okay, not only now do I have all 4 legs of the stool, now
Right.
I'm leading one of the biggest sponsorship portfolios in the world, right? Like what are you talking about? I should be the person tapped to run the Chicago Bears. That was going to be my dream. That
Right.
dream did not come to fruition. I ended up at JPMorganChase working on a lot of concerts too as well. We sponsored US Open, all kinds of stuff, festivals. But one thing we sponsored was the On the Run tour, which was Jay-Z and Beyonce.
Mm.
And I believed in active sponsorship, not passive sponsorship. We weren't the people who just cut the check and Terry, you go and do your event and just call us with some tickets later. This is the world's biggest bank. So we don't, that's not how we maneuver. So our thing is very disciplined and very active. But I got a chance to work with Rock Nation, with Jay in particular on the run thing. And this is where this all comes together. Still wanted to go run a sports team, but as I was getting frustrated with the lack of opportunities for the sports team, and it's super important, I told a young woman, Lauren Seawood, who's a good friend of mine, about that frustration just through a night of drinking. And she said to me, and I give her full credit for this, she said, Steve, have you ever told Miss Tina or Beyonce this story? I said, well, what story are you talking about? Story about how you accumulated all these skills and how you aren't getting an opportunity to run a team and da 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 da. And I said, well, first of all, why would I tell Beyonce this story, right? Like, I'm basically, it took me 2 shots of brown liquor to admit to you, because again, this is where the moral story is. Remember, I'm sharing with some friends who are my peers in the business, my failure, right? This
Mm.
is, I wasn't used to failure, right? At least outward failure. Okay. So I'm telling them, you guys think I got this great job. You guys think I'm this person. Actually, the stuff I want to do, can't do. And I don't know if it's systemic, I don't know if it's me. I don't know what to do. But regardless of whose fault it is, it's not happening. And she said, no, no, no. You need to frame it to them of what it is you're trying to do, because I know a team you could run. And I said, what are you talking about? She said, Steve, everything you said, building up the media value, which is in the NFL terms is how do you have the relationship with CBS or you do the AFC? How do you have the Sunday night football on NBC? All of those things, right? She said, building up that media value, how come Beyonce can't have a relationship with HBO and Netflix and everywhere else? She said, you talk about selling tickets at stadiums around the world. She said, what if Beyonce wants to go on a stadium tour? She said, nobody knows more about that than you. I said, okay. Then she said, what about commercial licensing? What if Beyonce could sell her own uniforms, sell her own clothes? So, I said, okay, that's starting to make a lot more sense. And then last but not least, her thing was with corporate partnerships, you already sponsored their tour. So at the end of the day,
So
about
check that
doing that.
box.
Right. So she was like, bro, you treat Parkwood like it's the Dallas Cowboys. If the Dallas Cowboys, and this just shows you the valuation, said the Dallas Cowboys at the time are worth $2 billion. She's like, Beyonce should be worth 3 or 4, because the one thing she has that the Cowboys never have is she'll never have a losing season.
Oh,
The fans never come. No, by the way, that's any sports team. The fans never come to a Beyonce concert and then leave because they say, "Oh, you know what, Terry? She lost." You're like, how you if you could run that team, you could run this team, and you could take us to the next level. And again, it's a lesson. My pushback to her was, I said, "Well, Lauren, I'm not a music manager. I'm not like into music. Like, what are you talking about? I would
hmm.
lose my patience with that stuff." And she said, "No, no, no. You're thinking about this the wrong way. Beyonce doesn't need somebody that's a music manager. She needs somebody that knows how to run a franchise. So,
Right.
not Beyonce, the person. This has to be Beyonce is the new Manchester United. She's the new Chelsea. She's the new Lakers. And so, if these teams are trading for that value, the difference between what she's worth now and the difference between that franchise value, if you come in and create multi-billion-dollar value, bro, that's it. That's history. And I tell you, and this was the key, something more that I wanted to be other than president of the football teams. President of the football team was a title. But what I always wanted to do was two things. One, make my mama proud. Second, I wanted to make history. Because
Right.
remember, I'm coming from the place Martin Luther King, went. I'm looking at the Raphaels of the world. I'm looking at people, even though I'm making good money and I'm doing great, at the end of the day, I'm not making history. I'm not going to show and tell for my kids when they're in school and they're like, oh, look at my dad. He's a senior manager director at JP Morgan. Like,
Hmm.
that's great. And I love, that the Lord blessed me with that. But I'm like, holy moly, if I could take B and we could make history and we could do it the right way. Like, I'm no Suge Knight. I'm none of these guys. I'm no stereotypical person. I'm a nerd from the South Side of Chicago. So if I could come and just do the job, right? Just do the job. Like, look at not only how we could change Beyonce's valuation, but in the same way, the valuation of these teams. The first time someone sells a team, what does it do to everybody else's valuation in the NBA or NFL?
Raise their value.
Goes up. So now all of a sudden, if I could flip this and make the Beyonce franchise worth multi-billions, what does that do for Rihanna? What does that do for the young kids sitting there? Because right now, Shea Alexander is making what, $60 million a year in pro sports. Well, if Magic didn't have that $25 million contract from the Lakers, we wouldn't get to this point.
Right.
I'm like, maybe I can make history, right? Went, sat down with Miss Tina. God bless Miss Tina, and I got to give Lauren credit because behind the scenes, I'm very sure the same way Lauren is telling me what I should say, I'm
Right.
sure she told Miss Tina, this is what you should tell Steve, the whole nine. Miss Tina was like, hey, you need to sit down and rap with B. And she was like, I'm going to hook it up. Literally got a phone call. And by the way, this all happened in like maybe 2 weeks. This is no joke. I went from being depressed about my current situation. 2 weeks later, literally B was like, Steve, let's do this. And my life has not been the same since. That is like straight up out of a movie kind of thing. And again, this is, I'm telling you real, this is coming from somebody who I thought I saw it all. I thought I experienced it all. I thought nothing could phase me. The whole nine, I'm good. Nothing prepared me for the whirlwind it would be of 2015 Beyonce. And now I look at 2025 Beyonce, and I'm super proud of her because right now I can tell you this point blank: we did not achieve every single thing we set out to do because no one does, but we achieved a lot, absolute lot. And I think one of the things I take a lot of pride in is people might talk about how she changed the game for herself, but I know for a fact that, and I won't mention names, a lot of these people are benefiting from the standard that we set, from the contracts that we created, from the value proposition, and from, honestly, the behavior. When I look and I see people going to football games, you and I want to go to preseason Rams game. If you come out to LA, you'll see half the crowd, right, dressed up in what? The Rams uniform, right? Okay, Boy Carter tour comes to, Atlanta this weekend. If I were to take you to that concert, you're gonna see half of these people wearing cowboy hats.
Right.
Right. If I take you to the Renaissance thing, half of them dressed up like they go on the Studio 54.
Right.
That mentality came from literally, I won't tell you the exact spot, but let's just say sitting at the end of the bar with me and Lawrence Seawood, dreaming. So going back to that dream, bro, like I tell people all the time, not all dreams come true, but you can't tell me dreams don't come true
Right.
because I'm living proof, bro. Like I said, I grew up, my mama was a teenager, raised me. I can tell you, I've been in the same stadium that Jesse Owens ran in the Olympics with Hitler, and me being Jay sold it out seats. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, that's my journey, man. And to sum it up, if you move 10 degrees 9 times, you're going to be 90 degrees from where you thought you would start. So it's a
And
lot of incremental steps.
100%. And I don't even know if I even told you this before, but I remember when they were talking about who was running Beyonce's company. They said, oh, she doesn't just have the traditional music industry people running her company. She has people who have finance backgrounds. And now this is how important it is to expose people from our community to things that they may not be privy to. The first thing that came to my mind, and bruh, I was like, okay, she must got some white people running her company. I'm gonna give it 100 with you, bruh. I was like,
It's all good. It's all good.
finance, because when you think of finance, you don't always necessarily think of people of color.
Yeah.
So when I heard that, and then to my surprise, not only is it somebody of color, it's the bruhs. So that lets you see sometimes we might hold our own selves back mentally based on what we've seen and what we think is possible.
Yeah. And by the way, man, the beautiful thing about that story I tell people all the time isn't that you had that situation and you stayed there. It's that you had that situation and mental thought and you were able to overcome it. And not only the joy that it brought you to see that it was the bruhs, but the reason it brought you joy is because you could see yourself for once.
Right.
You said, wait a minute, if she's dealing with something that I'm a part of, then guess what? You are a part of that. So again, I'm not perfect and no one is perfect. Neither is Beyonce. At the end of the day, though, we took that seriously and I still take it seriously. That's why you don't see me. It isn't because I'm not a human being. You don't see me in situations where I'm doing something untoward or any of that stuff. It's because I know people are watching. And the people are watching are not watching to see me fall. They're watching, frankly, to lift me up. So I don't want
Right.
to disappoint them, you know. And then the other thing is Matthew knows, you know, her father is the brus.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, you know, when we did Coachella, you know, as the salute to historically black colleges and that experience that goes with that, that came directly from our own experience. Oh, and I take so much pride in that because I tell people, man, the distance between true excellence, right, is a small step, right? When you look at, you ran track, okay, the world's fastest man, Usain Bolt, and the person that came in eighth in that Olympic heat, those people are not 20% differential. Are like less than 1%.
Right.
Now, answer this question. If you could be your authentic self, and I don't mean that pompous, I'm coming to work as my, you know, authentic self BS that you see a lot of these people parading on the internet. I'm talking about if you could really just be Terry, the good, the bad, the whatever, you could just be Terry. And you don't have to worry about judgment. You don't have to worry about resources. You don't have to worry about any of this stuff. You mean to tell me your performance ain't going to increase 1%? So
Mm-hmm.
again, I'm here to tell you is once I took off all that, I need to prove something to somebody, or they think I'm this and I'm really that, or, you know, all those insecurities. And my performance improved just 1 or 2%. Her performance improved just 1 or 2%. That's the difference between the Coachella we did and the Coachella that just happened.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't that, you know, these people that's doing it now are not professional, aren't competent, aren't smart. They all went to go get their version of me, right? Like, just to be
Right.
100% honest. But they went to go get the resume that I had when she hired the person. And that to me is the biggest lesson I would love for everybody to take away is that the resumes are signals of who you are. Your achievements are signals of who you are. Never think that that is really who you are. You're not the title. You know, I'm not a finance guy. I'm a guy who happens to know finance. The same way, if every time I talk to you, I say, man, you know, Terry, Terry who? Man, Terry the track star. You're like, bro, I done done so much. Like, what are you talking about? You're not lying. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? You're not lying. But at the end of the day, I'm more than that,
Right.
right? Right. And so, but we have to embrace that we're more than that. That doesn't mean we don't have responsibility to use the skills that God provided for us and the gifts that God made for us. I'm not saying that at all. If you're a doctor, God bless, you should treat patients and cure people and do the things, but you aren't just a doctor, you're a human being, and you got more to give than that. Because once you get a room full of doctors, then how you going to differentiate yourself if you don't know what your other gifts are, right? If you're in
Right.
a room full of finance people, what's going to separate you out? And going back to widen that aperture, also the higher you climb, the more we all are CEOs, the more we all have responsibilities, the more we all have resources, the more we all are independently wealthy. But I tell
Right.
people all the time, man, it's three stories, right? And I love to use threes because threes are easy to memorize. But at the end of the day, you're going to write three stories in your life. And you're writing one right now as we speak. The first thing you're going to write is your resume. Because when you're early on in your career and life, you're trying to accumulate skills, experiences. You're trying to fill out that sheet of paper that tells people this is the value you add in exchange for the value they're going to give to you. The
Mm-hmm.
second story, right? Once you have your resume, you're going to start writing your biography. What did you do within that field? You became a scientist, but what did you cure? What did you discover? You became an astronaut, but did you land on Mars or the moon? right? So you write your biography. But what's the third and most important chapter? What hopefully, no matter who we are, I don't care if we're rich, poor, well, I pray for every person on earth, they're going to get this story read by somebody else. It's their eulogy. Your eulogy is going to have reflections from your resume. It's going to have excerpts from your biography. But your eulogy is generally about the man or woman you are. And as Maya Angelou said, how you made everybody else blessed from your presence. So
Mm.
you could be, to your point, you could be a Grammy Award winner. You could be a finance person. You could be from the South Side of Chicago, right? So that's my resume and bio. But the third thing is, man, what did it mean? What not what it meant for me. What did it mean for my family? What did it mean for everybody else? What's the
Right.
standards that we set? And if we could set those standards, then we live forever.
This episode of Prepare for Takeoff is brought to you in part by Riverside, the platform that I trust to record studio quality podcasts right from my laptop. With Riverside, I get crystal clear audio and 4K video. Plus, it's super easy to use. Whether you're a beginner or a pro, Riverside helps your podcast sound amazing. Try it out for yourself. Click the affiliate link in our show notes and start recording like a pro with Riverside. Realizing that you have transitioned from so many different professional settings, if you will, from Wall Street, now you're giving an acceptance speech for the Peabody Award, and then you get the Grammy and all of these things. So what was that experience like for you, those pinch me moments, and to your point, like for your family and friends back in the shop?
Man, well, I think it's a multitude of different things, right? The first thing is, I mean, it's an honor, bro. It's an honor. There are plenty of times I sat by myself and to be honest, in the shower, I'm like, man, I can't believe this. Like, let me be super clear. I'm like, did they make a mistake? That's one piece of it. No, it's one piece of because you're never satisfied. See, because again, remember, I know the mistakes that we make, right? You just see the finished product. So when you see the finished product, you're seeing what we edited down. You're not seeing the whole thing, right? So sometimes that ignorance is bliss. Well, on the flip side, too much information is contempt, right? Familiarity breeds contempt. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
so close to it, you're kind of like, wait a minute, well, I don't know if it was all that. That's sort of one emotion. The other emotion, and this is very valid because it jumps between insecurity and confidence. The other emotion is I'm not looking at what we won. I'm looking at what we didn't win,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm still bothered that Lemonade didn't win the Grammy. Like, I know it's the professional thing to say in the whole nine, oh, win some, you lose some. No, because I know what we put into that. I know what the intent was. I know what the goal was. I know what the final output was. I know we had book clubs. I know we had Harvard Business School case studies around that film. I know HBO, their perception and trajectory changed a lot after having that film. I know music videos. We put the nail in the coffin for music videos because you weren't coming out with some dumb pop stuff. Rap was cool. But once we came out with Lemonade, name a R&B video you care about.
Mm-hmm.
Right, it's over. You know that whole thing where they say it's over? It's
Right.
over after that, right? That like again, when you go talking about Coachella, name a festival performance. Now you see everybody got a marching band. Everybody compares themselves to what we did. And so it's a part of me that it will always be like, you know what? And by the way, back then, I mean, we should just count on Wikipedia, we might few dozen awards. I don't even list all those things, because my feeling is that's the team. And I'm not focused in on, the individual accolades, but I will say it's great to be acknowledged, especially for intent. I don't want to be the highest grossing tour. I want to be the tour that everybody says, man, I had a fantastic time. I didn't know a show could be like that. That makes me happy, right? Just to be super candid. And then last but not least, in terms of my family and friends, what's beautiful is I really believe this. You don't have to deny where you came from in order to show people that it's more to the world. So meaning, end of the day, bring the Grammy back home to the South Side because it's really theirs. I was awarded something called Candle in the Dark, which is the highest alumni honor you could get from Morehouse. It's Benjamin E. Mays Award. What that means to me is being part of the brotherhood that we are in. And when they gave me that award, I brought my mother up on stage, and it's the proudest I've ever been in my life. And I gave it to her because my achievements at Morehouse is her. So if you go back to our same house right there on 80th and Green, and you go up there on the mantle, that's their biggest day, being the highest Morehouse Alumni Award, because it was times where she could have been like, I don't have the tuition, you got to come home. But she never
Right.
told me that. It was times where she could have gone to the Essence Fest or gotten her hair done or been with her sorority sisters. But instead, she took her last dimes and made sure I was straight. And so, again, that selfishly giving back to her did a lot for me. But at the same token, I wanted to establish a tone set for my younger relatives that my grandmother used to set for me, which is we as kids ate first. And a lot of people don't understand the management lesson in that. I just said all the time when, things were haywire on tours and, cash flow is going back and forth. At the end of the day, I call the business managers up and say, listen, don't send me anything this week. I never took a per diem. It's a true story. I went on tour probably 3 years consecutively. I never took a per diem a day in my life.
Mm.
Not because I couldn't do it, but I felt like at the end of the day, I'm good. The roadie plugging these lights in, they need to eat first. Why do I have a reserved table at craft services and cafeteria? That's ridiculous. If I don't show up, if I get sick, that concert is still going on. At the end
Hmm.
of the day, if some of these grips, if some of these seamstress, if some of these dancers don't show up, then we don't have the same show. So they eat
Right.
first. I go to Uber Eats to give me a burger. They need to eat this nutritious food. They need to eat first. And when, again, from the tone my grandmother showed me and the tone I'm trying to show my kids, is the tone I'm trying to set in these environments because that's what people remember.
Right.
It's still people that come up to me this day all around the world, white, black, US, from every nationality. They're like, man, Steve, I remember we were at that festival, bro, and I was waiting in line, this, and this, and you came through and they came out to get you to bring you to the front. You was like, nah, bro, I'll wait here with Terry. We good.
We good.
We good. Because again, if I'm showing them that from this status you get this treatment, then we setting that tone. It's like, bro, it ain't no treatment. Guess who the most important person is at their shows? It's not us. It's the people out there in those seats.
Right.
That's who the most important person is. But we talk this stuff, you got to show people. And by the way, when you show people, I can't tell you it don't feel nothing but good, bro. Yeah, I tell people this all the time. It feels great to be anonymous and you still get 80% of the benefits and you feel good about it. I'm just telling you, you feel good about yourself.
We're wired the same way as it relates to our desire and how we're wired as it relates to wanting to pour into other people. Like I
Yeah,
want to pour into someone else's cup, and later for me, if it means I'm going to drink less because I like to pride myself in being a force multiplier. How can I help bring change to the room? How can
there
I
you go.
how can I provide solutions to other people's problems? And no matter what professional hat I may have wore over the years, and I've worn quite a few of them, the common denominator is me solving problems. How can I make a situation better? It's not about me. So we have that in common.
And with some of the things that are going on right now in the entertainment space, and we'll talk about what I'm into now, but what I see is hurt people. So in other
Mm-hmm.
words, we've been oppressed, we've been so repressed in terms of our goals that we believe the diva, that doesn't mean it's a gender specific thing, because there are many men who can act that way. We believe that showing out is a part of who we are and where we need to be when that never works. I get so hurt if I go to the BET Awards and I see during the commercial break us acting, as I call it, a natural fool. I go to the Grammys, and it's, by the way, it's the same people. It's not two different people. And
Mm.
it'll be the commercial break between the country and classical albums, and we're sitting there in all tuxedos, quiet as mouse. I don't like that because, as I told you before, growing up on the South Side, in order for me to survive, I had to have respect. had to be respected because I gave respect. I don't like the disrespect that we show each other in our culture. And we've made it cute and we've made it funny, and it's not. Because the truth of the matter is, we're not getting anywhere. And I say we, I'm fine. Let me be super clear, but I'm not as fine as I could be because the best party in the world is a party open bar, meaning we can all drink. I don't like going into these places knowing I'm straight and looking around at my peers and saying, I wonder if they're gonna be here. And that's to me is the shame. We've been doing this now. We talk about 50 years of hip hop. One thing you and I didn't talk about is my grandmother and her brothers and sisters were in the entertainment business. My grandmother's brother is Sam Cooke. So we've been doing this for almost literally 150 years. There's been Black entertainment. If you saw Sinners and you see the blues, you literally know for 150 years, Black people have been making money off entertainment. And the only reason we weren't making money off entertainment before is because we weren't making money, period, as slaves in this country.
Right.
So I look at our legacy of what we've contributed. And by definition, is that old phrase, you don't necessarily get everything you deserve, but you deserve everything you get. So the
Mm-hmm.
little that we have been able to get from this community, I wish our only problem was other people. That's my prayer for the Black community, that our only problem is racism. Our only problem is the bad deals we get from the record company. Because before we get to the bad deals from record company, I don't know another record company that has killed a Black creator. I'll
True.
wait. Okay. But I do know, and you know, how many times we've harmed each other over art.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is crazy. And we
Extremely.
celebrate it. We grew up, when you talk about growing up in the 80s in Chicago, I remember looking at cable TV when it first came out, and I saw Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath. And I was like, man, Black Sabbath, ain't they worshiping the devil? This is
Mm-hmm.
crazy. And when he bit the head off of that bird, right? Now, that's a man who, in my lifetime, went from being ostracized for killing animals on stage and worshiping the devil to having a family show on MTV called The Osbournes. On the flip side, we know people that started off producing records like Come and Talk to Me by Jodeci, who on trial for all type of deviant behavior now. Which culture going in the right direction?
Right.
Rock and roll leaving that crazy stuff and becoming mainstream. When you become mainstream, you are not old enough to know. I'm talking about individuals that are salt of the earth. MC Search, MC Hammer. These are individuals I can tell you that are great men. We calling them sellouts. We calling Sir Mix-a-Lot sellout. But at the end of the day, some of these other people, we're saying, oh no, that represents the culture. That's who we want to be. And my thought process is, even if you're gonna sell your soul, at the end of the day, what did you sell it for?
Mm-hmm.
So if we don't own nothing, if we don't control anything, if we don't have wealth from anything, 90% of the wealth in music is created by non-music ventures. Rihanna ain't a billionaire off of the Anti album. Kanye didn't become a billionaire off of College Dropout. So at the end of the day, why are we acting a fool over something that doesn't even provide value to us?
Right.
That's, like I said, that's the only thing to answer your question directly. When I look at those awards, I say, man, I didn't get a chance to really deal with some problems. We did some stuff. I never diminished that. But I'm like,
Right.
man, if I had to do all over again, I wish I could have saved some of these people.
Thinking about starting your own business? Make it real with Shopify, the all-in-one platform trusted by millions to sell online and in person. Whether it's merch, art, or digital goods, Shopify gives you the tools to build, grow, and succeed. And here's the best part. When you sign up using the affiliate link in our show notes, you're supporting Prepare for Takeoff and starting your business off right. Click the link and start your free trial today. It's unfortunate, man, because we've accomplished so much, whether it's on record, whether it's on stage, whatever. There's so many things that we've yet to accomplish in the community. And that's really what we should be striving to do, to be able to have some success and then bring some of that success back to the communities that we've come from and build up those communities so that we can lead by example rather than removing ourselves from those communities. And we've seen it during the days of segregation. You know what? One of the things that I share with people is segregation. It had a lot of deplorable things that came with it. But what it
Hmm.
did, it forced us to work with one another. It forced us to build community. And the minute,
Hmm.
those barriers were removed, then a lot of people, they left those communities to fend for themselves and they never came back. And they
Yeah.
never gained the acceptance that they were seeking in those other communities that they moved to. And the other people that they left behind, they just begin to become their own worst enemy. And we can talk about all the problems. I think what you and I are in a position to do is be a part of some of those solutions.
Yeah.
And people believe what they see, not what they necessarily hear. Like, so if I say
Yeah.
one thing and do another, then I'm going to lose all credibility. And you
Well,
spoke to that. It's very important that you conduct yourself in a manner where that people don't see you in a negative light, but because you want to be the example. You want to continue to represent that candle in the dark and that
yeah.
Morehouse man, that honor that was bestowed on you. And we have to be very intentional in doing that. I want to continue to give you your flowers and talk about how you're now the president and CEO of VERZUZ. And I realize that you guys have generated over 6 billion views, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And every one of your events averages at least 1 million views. So talk to me about what that's been like and, some of the things that's in store for VERZUZ moving forward.
Yeah, look, I think first of all, we got to start off with how blessed I am to be part of that team because other things I created, this I could absolutely tell you, I came on and it was already rolling. And I give shout out to first of all Swiss, Tim, Grady, Mo, Thomas, Dima, I mean Donna Marie, the list goes on about the people who are involved. I think the beautiful thing about Versus is that again, it goes back to that what I call the three-card Monte of our community, which is people think that they're seeing a show with two rivals. First of all, very few times is anybody really truly a rival. Secondly, the whole goal is to give flowers and to give people the intention that they really truly deserve. When I look at like a Stephanie Mills and a Shaka Khan, I look at Earth, Wind, and Fire versus Ozzy Brothers. I look at BB and CC Winans versus Mary Mary, and that only exists if you have 3 6 Mafia versus Bone Thugs and Harmony. If you've got UGK having a situation with 8 Ball and MJG. So these things all balance out. And what I love about it is that you don't have a portfolio. And I tell people, look at the Versus portfolio and tell me you've seen in hip hop and R&B as diverse a participatory group. Like I said, I could tell you Brandy and Monica. I could also tell you Fred Hammond and Kirk Franklin, right? Like people forget, you know what I mean? Like and again, going back to familiarity breeds contempt, people talk about Dipset and the Locks, right? They don't talk about Keisha Cole and Ashanti. They don't talk about SWV and Escape. But what I love is when you see the opportunities. Again, these are not people that we put on. These are some of the greatest hip hop and R&B acts of all time. But when you see the resurgence of their careers, when you see the stages that they're on now, and I love that, man. I mean, to be honest, I super love it because we're fans, right? When you see a SWV, who thought before they were on Versus that they didn't have a great catalog? They have one of the most iconic catalogs, period. But after they did that, that's when the TV show, that's when the tours, that's when everything comes on. And so when you ask about what I look forward to in the next iteration of Versus, and we had to clean up a lot of the corporate things behind the scenes, as you know, that's super important. That's like a great chef not having clean dishes, right? At the end of the day, we need to get that together, and that's what I think the Lord blessed me with having a skill set to do. But what I look so forward to is not the individual matchups. I look forward to more of the career resurrections, more of the people, and I can't tell you who, but more of the people that you say, man, Steve, like, that's my group. Like, oh my God, this is my guy or my girl, man. I'm such a fan. And getting those people back in the light they truly deserve. Because again, I tell people all the time, we're not giving people anything. Who gives the Ozzy brothers anything, right? These are accolades they deserve. All we're doing is providing, frankly, a stage for them to shine on. And this is the most important thing with Versus is three participants, and the two that are on stage are actually three and two. The number one participant in Versus, and who I always will have loyalty to and keep first, is the audience. The audience makes the verses. It's the funny comments. It's the brands like Popeye's Chicken and you plus Michelle Obama all in one comment, all throwing up the fire emojis, right? That's what makes verses. And so when people talk about we need beef, we need this, or it's got to be this person versus that person settling what's wrong, that's the quintessential thing that tells me they don't even understand what versus is. They really, truly don't.
They don't get it.
They don't get it because, again, what they don't get is what a moment it is when BB and CC Winans, who hadn't performed together in a very long time, when they say I'm lost without you, and they sing, and it's Stevie Wonder's in the audience and he's moved to tears. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's, by the way, that's being shown to 700,000 people at one time.
Right.
So something that Swiss talks about, which again, it's not necessarily apples to apples comparison, but when's the last time that you've seen, I won't use the name, but any of these groups perform for an audience that's 60,000? There's only 50,000 seats for the Superdome when Essence does the stage. Okay. So now you're talking about gospel Black acts performing for almost 1 million people live.
Wow.
Okay. I tell people all the time, I love BET. Scott Mills is a friend of mine. Steal the idea. When's the last time they had the Winans on? Not for a song on an award show. I'm talking about, tell me right now, you could go anywhere and see traditional R&B for hour and a half, 2 hours, let alone 3, 4 hours sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Where's Anthony Hamilton live in concert? Where's Music Soul Child live in concert? Where's Jill Scott, Erica Badu? I go down the line. Nelly and Ashanti, Quiet as Kept, are back together because of Versus.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like Fat Joe, again, yesterday's price is today's price. Where did all that come from? And so I literally look at Versus, like I said, acts have to be in order. We have to be in order. The people have to see it. So those business things are there. But even if Versus stopped today, I'd argue Versus is up there with Soul Train, Bandstand, 106 in Park, any one of these things in terms of cultural impact. And I say that because the artist will tell you, as Fat Joe said, yesterday's price is not today's price. I've seen the tour, like I'm in the business. I see the offers that people were getting before Versus. I know the offers they're getting
Mm-hmm.
after. And the thing that Tim and Swiss don't get credit for, and Swiss probably gonna be mad that I'm saying this, but I'm gonna say it right now on the record. How much money do you think Swiss has ever made from Versus?
Mm.
All that stuff about, even Triller, the whole nine, that's equity in companies that are worthless. At the end of the day, that man lives in the same house they used to film Iron Man 2. He's married to Alicia Keys. At the end of the day, do people really think that the quest for money, that he was like, Steve, what can we do to make the most money? Oh, I know. Let's put Fred Hammond on with Kirk Franklin. That man, bro, the sponsorship game. Like, I mean, this is what I'm talking about, man, with our people, man. They get ridiculous. This a man who literally, did upgrade you for Beyonce and Jay-Z. Timberland did Drunken Love for Beyonce. Okay. So you think these guys are sitting around saying, man, after all these platinum records, after all this stuff we done, man, I know who we could take advantage of. Let's really let's get Method Man and Redman. Like
Right.
what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Like I said, the gift of podcasts is everybody has a platform. The curse is everybody has a platform, but nobody has expertise. It's less than 20 people in the world that could say they've been where we are and done what we've done. And I feel fortunate to be one of those 20, but it's 2,000 people simultaneously on the internet right now talking about it.
Right. As though they're subject matter experts.
Bruh, listen, I tell people this all the time. Just because you're a frequent flyer doesn't mean you could land that plane. Stop it.
Right, right.
Stop it. Just like the person that go to the restaurant every Friday. I respect your opinion, but that doesn't mean you can cook. Doesn't mean you know how to run a restaurant. And by the way, why do most of those businesses fail? Because people go into it the wrong way. To your point, they go into it because they have consumer experience and they have the aspirations to run these businesses, but they don't have the experience or the skill set. And one thing I did learn from the South Side is what goes with a hard head, usually a soft bottom, so
Hard lessons.
come on, bro. Come on, bro. Like it's people that tried to do their own version of verses. And I don't have to mention their name. You can go look it up. I'm talking about during the pandemic. How did that work out? Because
Yeah.
again, you can copy what you see. That has nothing to do with the process. Like I said, that's the difference between you and I. We go to airport. We can go to airport every day for a year. Now let us try to start an airline.
Right. We can fly every airline. Doesn't mean that we can start our own. Or
Come on,
like,
bro.
how did those? They look like Jordans, but they weren't Jordans. How did that work out?
Come on. And this is important because it just dawned on me we were talking about Southside Chicago and growing up in the 80s. One thing I gave credit to was the people in the village. What I didn't give credit to is the community and the symbolism and the organizations that I saw as teenagers in Chicago. Most people forget in the 1980s, you had Rainbow Push, Jesse Jackson's organization on 47th and
Mhm.
Drexel, okay, on one end of the spectrum. You had right down the street from them the El Rukin headquarters with Jeff Ford on another end of the spectrum, right? You had on 79th Street the Gangster Disciples, but you also had the Final Call. The headquarters for Nation of Islam is Chicago. In Hyde Park, which is where I went to high school, okay, you had Muhammad Ali's mansion and you had the Minister Elijah Muhammad's mansion. And around the corner is where Barack and Michelle Obama live. And that's all within the University of Chicago complex, right? So I only say that to say, at the end of the day, we didn't know a wide aspiration in terms of the careers we could have, but we absolutely knew the community was a part of it. I could go to Seaway Bank, where my grandmother was working at, right? Supreme Life Insurance, Black insurance firm. I could go down to Johnson Publishing, who had a skyscraper, and guess what radio station was in there? WJPC. And the morning jock was Tom Joyner, right? These are all when we were kids. We would go on field trips to Johnson Publishing and look at the magazines. And within the Johnson Publishing magazine, every year, what did they have an issue on? Black college queens.
Mhm.
So we could fold out and we seen everyone from Johnson C. Smith to Spelman. So when I was going to school, at high school, I should say, it was no excuse like, oh, you don't know what these historically black colleges are. You don't know what Tuskegee is or whatever. Man, the Tuskegee Airmen would come to Washington Park and do the shows and pass out flyers and say, do you want to go to Midway Airport, learn how to fly a plane? This in the same neighborhood that's considered the most dangerous neighborhood in the world,
Right.
right? O Block. Some people think that that's worse than being overseas. I don't personally, but that's
Mhm.
the image they have you have. That same
Right.
O Block, like I said, it was school teachers. The ice cream man came, and the ice cream man was a part-time job. That person was also a cop.
Mhm.
And so, again, when I look about the neighborhood, I thank God because for every show like Good Times to show Cabrini Green in the Chicago housing projects, movies like Cooley High that show that aspect of Chicago, it was all the above. And if you're going to be a Black community, you got to see and be aware of all of the different things. And so I just have to always give credit for that because that dichotomy where you look left, you see the gangbangers. On the other hand, you see the scholars, you see the professors, you see the, homeless people. We called them winos back in the day. We didn't even know drug addict. Drug addict was like something you saw on TV. We just knew people from alcoholism. So I was there to see the alcoholics. At the same token, I also remember Jesse Jackson and his sons literally spray painting over the small liquor signs in our neighborhood that said there's too many beer advertisements here. So this is the mentality we came up with. And now I look around, who is protecting our kids from these advertisements? Who's protecting the youth from this? You and I've been in the music business enough to know that Walmart, you couldn't sell explicit records. Back when the number one retail establishment for music was Walmart. Back when Beyonce did the self-titled album, who was her biggest retail partner for that self-titled album? That was back when you had special edition albums. It was Target. Now it's the same company that say they don't need diversity.
Mm.
I mean, so this is what I'm talking about, man. The gift is we grew up around all this stuff. The curse is we grew up around all this stuff.
Right.
It makes
It's
us,
the
it
same
makes me
thing.
like kind of like, oh, bro, you claim to be woke. How many times did you go listen to Farrakhan for free? I know we did. You claim to be aware. How many times did you help Jesse Jackson and the Rainbow Push team pass out free meals? You claim to come from, it kills me. People who don't come from our neighborhood claim it. And there's a professional basketball athlete. And it's just a shame. He seemed like a good brother. I saw him ranting and raving the other day, talking about he was known at O Block as a 50-year-old man. I literally wanted to go embrace him and just say, brother, I'm sad because you came from out of town and you believe, and the people there don't want to be known for that. People there want to get to where you are, bro. Instead of you pulling them from there and showing them it's a better way, you making them feel good about being dumb.
Give them the necessary, nourishment, if you will, to kind of get them to understand and realize, hey, take the blinders off. There's a lot more to see. There's things that you don't see that you need to pay more attention to. And look at
Absolutely.
brothers like myself and you who may come from different backgrounds, but we have those similar things that we share in common. And there's more
Absolutely.
things that we share in common than we realize.
Absolutely. Whenever people ask you, how do you climb Mount Everest? You got to say one step at a time.
One step at a
So I
time.
would tell you what the solution is. And sometimes, again, we waiting for the differential equation formula when the answer is just plain arithmetic. Each one teach one person at a time. Every time you down, if I can help you, if every time I'm down, you can help me, and then we could both help out a third person. If we set that tone and then that person does that, then it becomes exponential. I tell people all the time, how does a virus spread?
One
From
person at a
one
time.
host, right, at a time, right? So COVID spread very fast. Okay. Ignorance spreads very fast, but so could knowledge. But more important, it has to be orientation and attitude. You could be very knowledgeable, but if you have a bad orientation and bad intention and bad attitude, then you're not going to actually be helpful. So I would tell you what you're doing right now, don't say it's to come up with the solutions. My only comment would be, bro, you are the solution. This podcast, if you reach one person and one person out of the 80 plus shows you did, if one person is like, you know what, I was gonna go left, but man, Terry and those guys, man, they put something in me. I'm gonna go right. Bro, you don't know what that's gonna impact.
Right.
You know what I mean? And just because you don't know it in the plane in which your eyes see doesn't mean you're not going to feel it in terms of the universe. So that's what I would, tell you. And by the way, again, I'm not coming to you with something I read. I'm not coming to you with something that I've heard. I'm telling you, bro, there is no statistical reason. I'm very analytical. No statistical reason why you and me should be having this conversation right now, other than divine communal intervention, which meaning
Mm-hmm.
somebody was ordained from up high to look out for us. And not just one point, it's a whole bunch of small stuff, like we talked about with
Mm-hmm.
career, right? It may not be one thing, it could be one thing, but it may not be one big thing, but a bunch of little minor things where somebody taps you on your coat and says, man, hold up, Steg, bro. Woo, woo. Hey, Terry, call up such and such. Boom. You never know. And that's why I
Never
say, bro,
know.
you the solution. And as long as you keep pushing, again, progress and perfection, two totally different things. You not
Right.
perfect, I'm not perfect. That don't mean we can't help this community progress. Because there's a lot of people out here striving to be perfect, ain't helped the soul. So what is it for?
Facts. Facts. Well, bro, as we close out, I want to give you the opportunity to leave our viewers and listeners with 3 things that you feel will help them prepare for takeoff.
Man, again, my 3 things are: write this down on a sheet of paper. Competence, confidence, compassion. Every day, set out to learn something new. It could be a simple thing, how to change a tire. It could be how to cook a certain dish. It could be how to study a language. It could be what the intricacies of putting on a festival are. Learn something new every day. The other thing is work on your own inner confidence, right? Your biggest hater in the world ain't gonna be a stranger you met online. Biggest hater in the world gonna be you. And watch how you talk to yourself and watch what your aspirations are for yourself. And then last but not least, the compassion of, man, giving back is the most selfish thing in the world, and it's fun because people could lose their jobs. Trust me, I have. People could lose their money. Trust me, I've spent. But man, bro, ain't no better feeling than helping out somebody and giving them the plug. Because all the knowledge, all the confidence, you can't lose. So I tell people all the time, how you gonna be a leader in the community and we can't find nobody that'll follow you anywhere? On the flip side, we know some people that we grew up with, bro. If they 100 heirs, forget about thousand or millionaires, then that's a stretch. That's a stretch. But we know them as that guy or that gal. Like I said, we old enough to know certain people when they came in the room, people like, oh, okay, Terry here. Like we up. They not Terry here, we up because oh Terry gonna buy us this or he got this money or he got this job. It's that feeling. You show back up on the yard, it's like okay, it's up now because the energy you bring and that energy don't cost nothing in that, but that energy comes from that compassion. Comes from that respect. And like I said, I come from a place where I could tell you ain't too many tough guys alive right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
If
So
they're
that
alive, they're
tough,
in jail.
come on, bro. And that ain't being alive.
Mm-hmm. That's
You know what
being
I mean?
buried
That's a whole
alive.
different podcast.
Right, right.
That's dead. You dead, but you still breathing
Mm.
because you got no control over your living being. But I say all that to say, at the end of the day, those are the 3 things that I try to live by that hopefully help me through both the thick and the thin. But I just feel like going back to your point on solutions, if we each work on just those 3 things on ourselves and others, it'd be a great world, man. I don't have to worry about what Trump and everybody else doing for us if I know I done done everything I need to do. Let them be the problem. I tell people all the time, let them be, let there's somebody I want to hear, bro. This is 100%. I want you, my prayer is, bro, old age and natural causes. We should write that. Maybe it's 4 things. Write those 2 down. Old age and natural causes. When you come to my funeral, I want that to be the prayer. Everything else is unnecessary. It don't make me any more money. It doesn't make me any happier. If you get to live your dreams until the Lord calls you home, and he calls you home in peace naturally after you done live long enough to accumulate not only a lot of information, but to dispense all this information you got, we up. Yeah, I meet you in heaven and we could be out there.
Exactly. Setting out a hop in heaven.
Come on, bro. Because think about it. Look at the smile on your face there. That's what I'm trying to say. Community brings real happiness. You know, just that feeling you got right there, man. We know, and we know some times where, you done bought a nice car or this nice woman types you. Those are great feelings. I'm not gonna minimize those feelings, but this true smile you had when you said we sat at a hop in heaven, that smile is not just based on your anticipation of what it'd be. It comes from that cumulative feeling you had so many more times where you felt free. You felt with the bros. It was no judgment. It was no, oh, Terry, what you working on? Terry, what's good? What's your investment profile? None of that mattered, bro. You was
Mm-hmm.
91.
Mm-hmm.
That's all that mattered. And people literally respect that because you respect what it means. Not everybody getting that treatment, that's your saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, that,
Facts.
that doesn't mean they're not God's children, right? And
Right.
we all respect, but it comes from what you put into it, not what you took out.
That's dope, man. This is like college level conversations. I mean, this is something that it needs to be taught at HBCUs, PWIs, and put into people's curriculum. All of the knowledge that you have, that you shared with me, our viewers and listeners, man, I'm just so grateful and thankful for the conversation. And I want to also privy our listeners and viewers with ways they can continue to get this good game that you're providing with us on this episode. It's by way of following your journey, whether that's on social media, whether that's LinkedIn, IG, website, anything that you feel comfortable with sharing with our viewers and listeners.
Yeah, basically every platform is just Steve Pamon, all one word, just STEVEPAMON. I wish I could say I had something clever and cool to come up with. The only caution I would give everybody, and by the way, feel free to follow me, is that the same way that's not representative of my life, right? None of this stuff is representative of anybody's lives. And like I said, if they remember those three things and just take care of each other, then that'd be way more important than following me, man. If somebody told me they left this podcast and they never followed me, but they helped out their brother or their sister, then, again, I'm up.
Want to create that
Come on,
chain,
man.
if you will.
That's what
one
I'm
link
saying.
at a time.
That one link at a time. And again, we got to have the redundancy, because if one person falls off, then the chain continues on, man. And that resiliency is what is going to obviously make us great, because it's what made us great in the past. I tell people all the time, we were strong people when we didn't have resources.
Mm-hmm.
We were strong people when we didn't have names, right? Like, why am I worried about my Instagram account or who?
How many
And
likes I
again,
have.
well, that's again, it goes back to these are businesses and that's marketing. Why are they saying likes, but the symbol for likes is a heart,
Mm.
right? By definition, they want you to associate like and love and blend those together. And we know love is something you're attached to that's non-transaction, right? I might not like what you did today, but because I love you, I'm going to stick
Mm-hmm.
with you, right? So love allows them more freedom, right? Like is very transactional. We good or we bad. So if they can get you to buy into like, which is transactional, but keep you staying where it's love, then they win. That's not there by
Mm-hmm.
accident. You think somebody said, okay, let's hit thumbs up, right? Which is universal for like, but everybody else is going to see a heart. You think that's just by accident? No. And so why are we falling for tricks that they set up after we know the trick? When you
Right.
don't know the trick, it's cool. But at the end of the day, you're the person going in. It's like, I'm going to keep pulling the slot machine. I've seen 100 people lose, but I'm that guy. Don't be that guy. And that's why I say with social media, with all this stuff, it's fantastic. It's a great tool. It's a tool. It's not a life. You got people out here thinking that they got, and again, we use the music business. My ex-boss has 300 million plus followers. Okay, this Cowboy Carter tour might sell 3 million tickets at best. Truly 300 million people were down for whatever she did, then the world would be a different place. You could elect a president. 77 million people voted for Trump. So
Mm.
at the end of the day, do we really think 300 million people around the world care about B? No. And by the way, that's fine. The only person I don't want to feel comfortable that 300 million people care about B is B.
Right.
That's the only person. And the rest of y'all, you think what you want to. Okay. In the same way, I know 30,000 people do not care about me. However, the 1,000 people that do is probably 900 more than I ever thought in my life. And so if I move accordingly to that, we good. And that be a lesson I give everybody.
That's dope, bro. Please allow me once again to give you your much deserved virtual flowers in this conversation. It was definitely very heartwarming and enlightening for myself. I'm sure our viewers and listeners, and we'll continue to wish you much continued success and continue to spread this good game that you spread on this podcast. Continue to spread it on other podcasts because, brother, you have a lot of knowledge, to say the least,
No, I
bro.
appreciate it, team. And honestly, and I'm not saying this to be falsely humble, I can tell you 99% of what I just said on this podcast is the things that, again, whether it's brothers on the corner, whether it's professors at Morehouse, whether it's the homies, whether it's our frat brothers, whether it's my mom and other ladies that are important to me, it's what they told me, and at
Mm-hmm.
best, I've just synthesized it. But that's the point, man. It's no ticket for originality, bro. As long as you progress with it, that's like if I hand you the treasure map, it don't mean anything if I wrote it. It's good. We up. You get it, go for it. So I said, thank you for having me, bro. And I want to say this. Thank you for doing this because again, you have a lot of choices. You could do a podcast about all type of negative things, and I guarantee you views will go crazy, but you chose for a reason not to do it. And in my belief, it's because that's not you anyway. And so, the same way these jobs don't make you are proof positive, though, that who you are is good enough. So, whoever listening to this, respect this, pass this on, not for me, but look at all the episodes that Terry can put together. Because again, bro, we can't talk about we want better for our community if we not doing better by our community.
I appreciate that, bro. I really do, man. Definitely made my day, to say the least. Not only do I want to thank you, man, I also want to thank our viewers, whether you're watching this on YouTube or watching this on Spotify, or you're listening on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Audible, iHeart, or Pandora. As you know, every week we're going to continue to bring you proven professionals and rising entrepreneurs. And all of these conversations, just like this one, will help you prepare for takeoff. Team, thanks for joining us, Steve.
Man, appreciate you. Rooted good bros.